Okay. And did she ask you for any money yet to get out of jail? What's the situation?
Yeah, she's looking at money, but I blow her off when she does it. No more. No more. I already gave her $85,000. I gave her $85,100. No more. Not a dime more.
I gave her $85,100, not a dime more. Deborah said those words with the kind of finality that comes too late. By the time she drew that line, tens of thousands of dollars had already vanished, sent to strangers, justified by love, and defended against everyone who tried to warn her. The woman she was in love with didn't exist. The voice on the phone belonged to a man named Joseph, and the person behind it all was sitting 8,000 miles away in Cape Town, South Africa. But for months, Deborah believed she had found her soulmate. This is the story of how artificial intelligence, emotional isolation, and a fabricated crisis conspired to drain a woman's savings. One justified wire transfer at a time, Deborah wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive in the traditional sense. She was lonely. According to her friend Stephanie, Deborah visited Miller's Ale House nearly every day, not for the food, but for the noise, the presence of other people, the sound of conversation. Stephanie first noticed her because Deborah spoke loudly, filling the space around her with words, as if volume could substitute for connection. They became friends over drinks and small talk. And one day, Deborah's energy shifted. She was glowing. She met somebody. That somebody was Matia, a blonde, short-haired woman who looked Scandinavian, confident, and successful. She claimed to be an engineer working on an offshore oil rig. She said she was worth $12.5 million. She lived in Palm Beach. She drove a green Porsche. And she was, according to Deborah, a perfect 10. Romance scammers don't target people because they're stupid. They target people because they're available, emotionally, socially, psychologically. Loneliness creates a kind of vulnerability that has nothing to do with intelligence. It's about isolation, routine, and the ache for something different. Deborah had been married before. She rated her ex-wife a 7 or 8, but Matia was different. Matia made her feel alive again, and that feeling became the foundation of everything that followed. If this story sounds familiar, or if you know someone being pulled into something that doesn't add up, stay with us. What you learn here could change everything. The relationship began on Tinder. A swipe, a match, a message. Nothing about it felt dangerous. That's the point. Matia's profile looked legitimate. The photos were polished, but not overly glamorous. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't rush. She just talked. Every day, multiple times a day. Text messages, voice calls, long, affectionate exchanges. Stephanie recalls Deborah describing their connection. They would sing to each other over the phone. Deborah would be sitting at the bar, mid-conversation with Matia, serenading her in public. Stephanie would cringe. I told her, "You're embarrassing yourself. Stop." But Deborah didn't care. She was in love. This is love bombing, a manipulation tactic where the scammer floods the victim with affection, attention, and future promises. It creates emotional dependency fast. The victim begins to associate the scammer with happiness, validation, and hope. And once that bond forms, it becomes incredibly difficult to break. Even when logic screams otherwise, Matia told Deborah they would get married. They would build a life together. Everything would be perfect once Matia arrived in Florida. The relationship felt real because the emotions were real. Deborah's feelings were genuine. The person on the other end was simply performing. Stephanie started noticing inconsistencies early. One day, while they were together at Miller's Ale House, Matia called. Stephanie asked to speak with her. When the voice came through the phone, Stephanie immediately knew. That's a guy. She didn't hesitate. She didn't soften it. She told Deborah directly, that voice is not a woman's voice. Deborah's response? Defensive, angry, loud enough for the bar to hear. She's a lesbian. Stephanie pushed back. Lesbians don't talk like that. But Deborah had already made her choice. She wasn't hearing doubt. She was hearing betrayal from a friend who didn't understand, who didn't want her to be happy. This is a critical psychological moment in scam dynamics. When a victim is confronted with evidence, they don't always process it rationally. Instead, they protect the relationship. They create explanations. They reframe reality to preserve the emotional structure they've built. In Deborah's mind, Matia's deep voice wasn't a red flag. It was a feature, something that made her unique, something that required defending, and the scammer knew that they always do. For weeks, the relationship existed in a kind of stasis, emotionally intense, but financially dormant. Deborah had money. She had stocks, savings, investments, but she was famously frugal. Bartenders at Miller's joked that the scammers had picked the wrong target. Then came the crisis. Matia said she was flying to Florida to meet Deborah in person. The itinerary showed a flight from JFK to Orlando, then on to Sarasota. Deborah was ecstatic. After months of waiting, her partner was finally coming home, but Matia never made it through customs. According to the story, Matia had retrieved a black diamond from the ocean floor, found it while working offshore in Mexico. She brought it with her on the flight. Customs agents at JFK detained her. She had paperwork, she said, but it wasn't accepted. She was arrested, and just like that, the love story became a rescue mission. This is where the scam pivots. The crisis introduction is a calculated escalation. It transforms the emotional bond into a transactional dependency. The victim is no longer just in love. They're responsible. They're the only one who can help. The only one who understands. The only one who believes. Urgency replaces patience. Fear replaces joy. And money becomes proof of love. The first ask was small, almost insulting in its modesty. Matia needed $25 for a gift card, something to help get her leave request approved at work. She sent Deborah a document on Shell Company letterhead, complete with her name, employee details, and approval signatures. Deborah sent the $25. It's a compliance test. Scammers use small requests to gauge willingness. If the victim sends $25 without hesitation, they'll send $250. Then $2,500. Then more. The amount isn't the point. The behavior is, and Deborah passed the test. Once Matia was in jail, the requests began to multiply. She needed money for legal fees, then bail, then customs fees to release the black diamond, which was now valued at over $135,000. Her own funds were tied up, she said, inaccessible. The bank wouldn't release anything while she was incarcerated. Deborah tried to send $5,000 in cash through the mail. The post office flagged it. Then she sent 2 cashier's checks, $40,000 each, to a woman named Michelle, who was supposedly Matia's lawyer. She also sent money to a woman named Susan in Missouri. Investigators later discovered that both Michelle and Susan were women in their 60s and 70s with no apparent connection to each other, no legal background, and no ties to Matia. They were likely money mules, people recruited, often unknowingly, to receive and forward funds, adding a layer of separation between the scammer and the victim. By the time Deborah spoke to the Catfish investigative team, she had sent $85,100, and Matia was still in jail. Everyone around Deborah tried to intervene. Her family warned her. Her friends confronted her. Bartenders at Miller's made jokes, then stopped joking. Stephanie repeatedly told her the truth. Deborah's response was always the same. You'll see. You'll see when she gets here. This is cognitive entrenchment. The more a victim is challenged, the more they double down. Criticism feels like an attack, not on the scammer but on the victim's judgment, emotions, and identity. Deborah wasn't just defending Matia. She was defending herself, her right to love, her ability to trust, her hope for a future that felt different from her past. Matia reinforced that isolation with emotional manipulation. She told Deborah she was suicidal, that she wasn't eating, that Deborah was the only one keeping her alive. The scam wasn't just financial anymore. It was existential. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. The voice, male, deep, unmistakable. The hand, a photo Matia sent, showed a large masculine hand with thick fingers. Stephanie called it out immediately. Deborah said Matia was part German and a big girl. The images. Every photo of Matia was either AI, generated, or heavily photoshopped. Skin tones didn't match. Neck and face were different shades. Backgrounds looked synthetic. The jail photos. Matia sent smiling selfies from jail and the hospital. Oh, she had full phone access, somehow. Guards allegedly took pictures for her. The Black Diamond story. Completely fabricated. Customs doesn't jail people for months over found gemstones with paperwork disputes. The Shell employment document. Investigators found identical documents on scam awareness websites. Formatting was inconsistent. Spacing errors were obvious. The stock photo hand. The injured hand image Matia sent was traced to a commercial stock photo site. Anyone could buy it. But red flags only work if someone is willing to see them. Deborah rationalized every single one. Stephanie finally convinced Deborah to work with the Catfish investigative team. Deborah agreed, not because she doubted Matia, but because she wanted to prove everyone wrong. The team moved methodically. They ran reverse image searches on every photo Matia had sent. 0 exact matches. Every image returned results, linked to AI generation tools or scam report websites. They analyzed the Shell employment document. It matched templates found on fraud alert pages. The formatting was amateurish. There were random spacing errors, inconsistent fonts, and phrasing that didn't match corporate standards. They examined the injured hand photo, perfect match, on a stock image website, purchasable for a few dollars. Then came the technical breakthrough. The team created an IP tracker link, a URL embedded with location tracking code. Stephanie sent it to Matia via text. Over the course of 24 hours, someone clicked it 21 times. Every single click traced back to Cape Town, South Africa, not New York, not a jail cell, not anywhere near JFK or Customs or any part of Matia's story. Cape Town is a known hub for organized romance scam operations. Investigators have documented networks operating out of internet cafes, rented apartments, and small offices, running dozens of personas simultaneously, targeting victims across North America and Europe. Finally, they called the phone number Deborah had been using. A man answered, "Hi, Joseph. How are you?" "I'm fine." "Do you know who this is?" "Monica." He played along briefly, then hung up. The voice was similar to the one Stephanie had heard months earlier. The number was registered to Joseph in San Antonio, Texas, but was being operated via WhatsApp from South Africa. When the team sat down with Deborah to present their findings, the evidence was overwhelming. AI-generated images, stock photos, fake documents, tied to known scam templates' IP address in South Africa. Male voice on a phone number she'd been calling for months. Deborah's reaction wasn't relief. It was devastation. Then where is she? Even in that moment, she was trying to reconcile the evidence with the emotional reality she'd lived in. The woman she loved didn't exist. The future they'd planned was fiction. The voice that called her every day belonged to a man, likely part of a network, working shifts, managing multiple victims. She wasn't special. She was a target. The team explained gently but firmly, Matia wasn't trapped. Matia wasn't real. And the $85,100 Deborah had sent was gone, likely distributed across multiple accounts, laundered through intermediaries, and already spent. Deborah's final words in the session were quiet. "I'm not very happy." It was an understatement of catastrophic loss. Deborah's bank had already begun monitoring her accounts, flagging transactions as potential fraud. But by the time they intervened, most of the money was unrecoverable. The financial damage was severe, but the emotional toll was worse. Deborah had structured her entire identity around this relationship. It gave her purpose, hope, routine. She woke up for Matia. She checked her phone for Matia. She defended her dignity because of Matia. And now, all of it was gone. Stephanie worried she'd go back, that the scammer would reach out again with a new story, a new crisis, a new reason to believe. And statistically, that's not unlikely. Many romance scam victims are targeted repeatedly, sometimes by the same network using different personas. Once someone is marked as financially responsive and emotionally vulnerable, they're added to lists, sold to other scammers, and retargeted. According to reports, Deborah was urged to block the number and cease all contact. But whether she did, and whether she stayed away, remains uncertain. This is why we investigate these cases, not to shame, but to expose the systems that make them possible. If you're seeing patterns like this in your own life or someone else's, don't wait. The earlier you act, the more you can protect. Let's reverse engineer what happened here, not to judge Deborah, but to understand the system that targeted her, why this scam worked. 1. Loneliness as infrastructure. Deborah's isolation wasn't a flaw, it was a condition. The scammer didn't create it. They exploited it. 2. Patience before pressure. Months of daily contact with no financial asks. This built trust, routine, and emotional investment. 3. Crisis as leverage. Once the bond was established, the scammer introduced urgency. Jail, legal trouble, suicide threats. Every crisis required money and secrecy. 4. Isolation from support. Deborah's friends and family became obstacles. The scammer positioned them as doubters, unsupportive, jealous. Deborah defended Matia against everyone, which deepened her isolation. 5. Small to large escalation. $25, then $5,000, then $40,000 twice. Each payment was justified by the previous one. I've already invested this much, I can't stop now. CEST, technological sophistication, AI-generated images, fake documents, WhatsApp routing, stock photos. The operation was industrialized. Red flags you must never ignore. You've never met in person, but they need money. Full stop. Doesn't matter the reason. They claim to be traveling, but get detained, arrested, hospitalized. Classic setup for financial extraction. Voice doesn't match gender or photos. Trust your gut. Don't rationalize it. They isolate you from friends and family. Love shouldn't require you to ignore everyone who cares about you. Every attempt to meet in person fails. New crisis, new excuse, new delay, always with a cost attached. Documents look generic or have errors. Real companies don't send paperwork with spacing mistakes and stock formatting. Photos feel too perfect or inconsistent. Run them through reverse image search or AI detection tools. What to do right now? Reverse image search. Every photo. Use Google Images, TinEye, or Social Catfish. If they're stolen or AI generated, you'll know. Never send money to someone you haven't met. No matter the story, no matter the emotion. Talk to someone outside the relationship. A friend, a family member, a professional. Scammers rely on secrecy. Use IP tracking tools cautiously. If you suspect fraud, investigative platforms can help verify location claims. Report it immediately to the FBI's IC3, FTC, local law enforcement, and the platform where you met. Deborah's story isn't about foolishness. It's about what happens when isolation meets industrialized deception. The person behind Matia didn't just lie, they built an entire emotional architecture, designed to feel real, sound real, and justify every request. They used cutting-edge AI tools to generate faces that don't exist. They wrote scripts refined across thousands of victims. They worked in shifts, managed multiple personas, and operated from a country thousands of miles away. And Deborah, smart, independent, financially stable, still lost $85,100. Because this wasn't a trick, it was a system. Romance scams are now a multi-billion-dollar industry. According to the FBI, Americans lost over $1.3 billion to romance fraud in 2022. Alone, the average victim loses $30,000. But many, like Deborah, lose far more. The tools have gotten better. The scripts have gotten sharper. The emotions feel more real. And the loneliness that makes people vulnerable, that's not going anywhere. So we keep investigating. We keep exposing. We keep telling these stories, not to humiliate the victims, but to dismantle the illusion that it could never happen to you. Because it can, it just hasn't yet. We built this channel because the best defense against fraud isn't fear, it's information. Every case we investigate, every pattern we expose, every warning sign we decode. It's all designed to give you the tools to see what's coming before it's too late. If this story helped you recognize something in your own life or someone else's, then it's already done its job. Stay curious, stay cautious, and never stop asking questions. We'll be here, investigating the next case. This is the Scam Anatomy.